Here are 12 rising AI and tech projects on GitHub right now. Infinite Monitor lets you build a live monitoring dashboard by describing the widget you want in plain English. The clever part is that it doesn't just fill in charts for you. An agent generates each widget as its own React app, with API calls and UI logic isolated in an iframe so one experiment doesn't wreck the whole board. Then you place those widgets on an infinite canvas, which makes it feel closer to an operator workspace than a fixed dashboard template. GroundStation gives satellite operators one place to track passes, tune radios, and pull live signals off the air. What makes it feel usable is the way the workflow stays connected. You can go from a global overview into a tracking console, then straight into the SDR waterfall, where signals become decodable packets and raw telemetry. It also handles the less glamorous but necessary stuff like syncing orbital data and managing SDR hardware. TaxHacker is a self-hosted accounting app that reads receipts, invoices, and transactions with AI, then turns them into categorized bookkeeping you can actually work with. What makes it feel usable is the operator surface. You're not stuck with one generic tax brain because you can tune categories, projects, and even the model prompts when the defaults misread your business. It also handles multi-currency records, including crypto, which matters fast once your expenses stop looking local. AutoResearchClaw tries to turn a vague research idea into a draft paper you can actually inspect. The pitch is basically one prompt in, paper out, but the useful part is the operator surface around that. Quick start for running it yourself. A section on how it iterates and improves its own workflow, and opencli integration so the whole thing can run through a chat interface instead of a pile of scripts. ShadowBroker pulls live open source intel into one map so you can watch private jets, satellites, seismic activity, and other signals in the same interface. The workflow seems aimed at an operator view, correlate weird movement across domains, then drill into use cases that are usually scattered across niche trackers and public feeds. I like that it's self-hostable with Docker, because a tool this surveillance-heavy really changes depending on who controls the data sources and update cadence. AdventureLog gives you a self-hosted place to plan trips and keep a map of where you've been, which is a lot nicer than scattering bookings, notes, and pins across different apps. The workflow seems split between future and past. Build an itinerary, mark places you want to hit, then turn that into a travel log once the trip happens. The screenshots make it feel pretty operator-friendly, with map views and trip pages doing most of the work. OpenCli turns websites, Electron apps, and local tools into commands an AI agent can actually call from the terminal. The workflow seems pretty practical. You reuse your existing Chrome login through a browser bridge, then map that live session into a standardized CLI surface instead of rebuilding every integration from scratch. That unified agent MD layer is the real hook, although needing the extension setup is a pretty clear trade-off. Understand Anything turns a code base into an interactive map you can search, click through, and question in plain English. The useful part is the workflow. You install it into Claude Code or Codex, let it build the graph, then use a dashboard to follow how files, functions, and concepts connect instead of skimming directories and hoping names make sense. That seems especially good for onboarding because the graph keeps teaching you as you trace dependencies and ask follow-up questions. CodeGraphContext turns a local codebase into something an AI assistant can actually query by indexing files and relationships into a graph database. The workflow is pretty direct. Run the CLI on a repo, let it build the graph, then expose that through an MCP server, so tools like desktop coding assistants can ask bigger structural questions than simple file search allows. What makes it useful is that the context isn't just chunks of text, it's how symbols, files, and dependencies connect. AEnvironment gives agentic AI projects a shared runtime, so you can treat tools, apps, and even other agents like standard environments instead of wiring each one from scratch. The workflow seems aimed at training and evaluation. There are built-in environments, a quick start for spinning one up, and examples that jump from an IDE-style app surface to reinforcement learning setups. I like the ambition here, although the big question is how cleanly that abstraction holds once real products get weird. My Brain is Full Crew is an Obsidian setup that tries to keep your notes, food habits, and mental health in the same operating system. The pitch is 8 AI agents with separate jobs. So instead of one vague assistant, you get a workflow that can capture ideas, track nutrition, and surface patterns when you're overloaded. I like that it doesn't pretend this is therapy. It stays closer to structured support, with the interesting bit being how the agents split responsibility inside one vault. Obsidian-Skills gives your coding agent a practical way to work inside an Obsidian vault so it can write Markdown correctly, handle bases in JSON Canvas, and fall back to the CLI when that's the safer move. The workflow is basically drop-in skills for Claude Code, Codex CLI, or similar tools, which matters because Node apps have a lot of file conventions agents usually guess at. Here the agent gets taught the vault's actual grammar down to folder-based installs like .claude or .opencode. Subscribe to Build Things with AI for more GitHub AI tool roundups